Hello, everyone. Hello. We're going to move on with our program. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Shelby Coffey, a trustee here at the museum, and we're delighted on behalf of the museum and our host, the American Petroleum Institute, to thank you all for joining us. This is just the kind of important discussion we love to have here. And we'll be looking at the energy world, where it has been and where it is headed in the new year. I also want to welcome those who have joined us live via webcast. Your live chat should begin now. I'm reading these instructions carefully. If any of you online or in the room happen to be tweeting this event, please note that the hashtag is #PoundEnergy2012. Pound Energy 2012. It sounds like a campaign slogan, but everything does these days. In this election year, the state of American energy is really a critical subject of great interest to all of us. And so taking a look at what is ahead as well as what has happened is a very good thing. This is the second annual event that we have done here. And looking at the ways of the oil and natural gas industries creating jobs and the economy, again, becomes a critical issue in the campaign. Speaking of that, please note that you should have received the API's The State of American Energy Report, an executive summary on your chair. In my old stomping grounds, Los Angeles, you would have had a summary of the executive summary because the studio moguls, some of them were a little so ADD that they really couldn't get them. But in Washington, we count on your brain power carrying you right through that executive summary at least. A few additional housekeeping items. Please note that your question cards, which are in your booklet, hold up card. Hold up card. There we go. Please fill those out if you want to ask a question at the conclusion of the program, and we'll collect them later. And we actually had quite a lively time last year. So, members of the press and bloggers, this is where my past as editor of the Los Angeles Times comes in. I ask that you hold your questions until the media briefing after the speech. But we're not censoring you. Okay. So, lastly, please ensure your cell phones are silenced. Miraculously, I did that myself before getting up here. I've occasionally gotten phone calls while on the podium. That will not happen to our speaker today, Jack Gerard, who's a prominent thought leader on energy and an expert on public policy. The two together have allowed him to help shape one of the most important issues facing our country. When he joined API in late 2008, he brought with him a strong industry trade association background as well as experience on Capitol Hill. He led both the National Mining Association and the American Chemistry Council before taking the helm of the Oil and Natural Gas Industries Trade Association. It represents all segments of the industry, includes nearly 500 members from the largest major oil companies to the smaller independents. We are all impacted by energy policy, and we look forward to hearing more about how the industry is addressing our nation's energy challenges and what policymakers need to do as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Gerard.
Well, thank you, Shelby, for your kind and always gracious introduction. And let me thank each of you for being here today. We have a full house. I was going to introduce all the VIPs in the room, but that would take all day because you're all VIPs, as we understand, here in Washington. So I'd like to go back and just introduce the head table for a quick moment, if I could, some special guests who are here with us before I share some remarks. First is Dan Yergin. I think many of you know Dan. Pulitzer Prize winner, the chair of IHS CERA. Dan, thank you for joining us today. Next to his left is Tom Gibson, one that many of you know here in Washington, has been around for some time, currently the president and CEO of the American Iron and Steel Institute. Tom, thank you. Next is Cal Dooley, former member of Congress from the great state of California and currently President and CEO of the American Chemistry Council. So Cal, thanks for being here today. Esther Aguilera is a good personal friend of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Esther, thank you for being here today. And as we all know, and you've met Shelby, let's give him a round of applause for a great building and a wonderful atmosphere to have this conversation today. Next to Shelby is Arnetta McRae, who heads the American Association of Blacks in Energy. Arnetta, thank you. And next to Arnetta, another familiar face, Governor Bill Graves, former governor of Kansas, currently the President and CEO of the American Trucking Association. Bill, thanks for being here. And next to him, one of his many able-bodied assistants, Glenn Kedzie. And Glenn, thank you for joining us here today. And again, thank you all for being here on this cold day where hopefully we're all reminded of the significance and importance of energy, affordable, reliable energy, keeps the lights on, and there are many others here represented I won't take the time to mention who are parts of the energy sector. And so we thank you particularly for your leadership and contribution in dealing with what I believe will be one of the most important issues in the 2012 election and moving forward from there. Now, what we talk about here in this great city is important because obviously policy is made in this town and it impacts all Americans. But there are also millions of other Americans who have something to say about the policy in this town, and hopefully those who represent those interests here will listen closely to the American people. Now, poll after poll, survey after survey that's been conducted over the past few years has given us an opportunity to hear from the American people, to hear what's on their minds and the way they view this most important issue we call energy. And so today as we begin, we'd like to take a few moments and share with you a brief clip, a record, if you will, of some of the views of the American people and what they're saying about energy today and the way it impacts them personally, impacts their families, and impacts their communities. So please join with me if you'll roll the tape.
Well, I think that the energy policy that we currently have is very restrictive to companies and that we should loosen it up a little bit.
I think like so many people, the interest is in exploring the opportunities we have.
We need to develop and use what we have here in America, and we have an abundance of oil, natural gas.
I think the natural gas and oil that they're bringing up out of the ground here in Carroll County will help this country maybe make a move towards some energy independence.
I think what we need to do is expand more on the resources that we have here in the United States.
Actually using what we have.
We shouldn't be dependent upon getting our energy and oil from outside of this country, and we should be able to take a little bit more control of that.
You don't put a drill in the ground today and pull out oil tomorrow. These things take years, and you have to go through environmental impact studies. So every day we delay, we're postponing American energy independence.
What the political landscape is right now, they're talking jobs, jobs, jobs. We don't have no jobs.
If we drilled, then it would create more jobs for people.
I would approve the Keystone Pipeline coming through, the Petroleum Pipeline. The number of jobs that it would bring into the country would be phenomenal.
I am all for building pipelines, and it will create jobs. It will help create jobs.
I look at the opportunity for jobs for people who need them. I see that as a genuine need. Empowers the country, empowers the citizenry. It makes us a better country all around. And I think it can be done and also look after the ecology.
But we need especially to be mindful of using what we have available today and working towards the future.
As I mentioned earlier, I think it's always good to listen closely to what the American public has to say about this important issue of energy. When you look at polling results today, clearly the vast majorities of all Americans believe that we should be producing more of our own energy, and we have the opportunity to do so here in the United States to improve our energy security and also to create jobs at a very difficult economic time. The comments that you've heard from many of those on the screen today are very heartfelt, and they cover the entire country. You've heard them from Ohio to Texas to the West Coast and to the East. Americans today are looking for consensus, which has become rare here in Washington, D.C. Without question, in this election year, we believe what the American voters are saying is, give us leadership. Give us leaders who share our vision of a strong and prosperous nation, which can be built on creativity and innovation, specifically in the energy sector. That's the vision that is also shared by those who work in America's oil and natural gas industry. It's built upon America's oil and natural gas sector, which is focused on economic development and providing the needed resources we need as a nation. A vision built upon the knowledge that we have resources to do even more than what we do today, and the vision that we can secure our own energy future. It's a vision, in our view, that's defined by opportunity. Where does this vision come from? It comes from three key facts. The first fact is that knowledge that we are an energy-rich nation. We have more oil and gas in the United States than anyone ever thought possible even 20 years ago. More potential energy than most oil exporting nations in the Middle East or in other parts of the world. And if you consider oil and natural gas, as well as our other fossil fuel coal, the United States has the largest energy resources in the world. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than China, more than Iran, Iraq, Libya, and Kuwait combined. When we look at our domestic energy options, fossil fuels, nuclear energy, renewable alternative energy such as biofuels, we see a nation that has an abundance of opportunity for growth. Key point number one. Fact number two, this vision is based on our knowledge that the oil and natural gas industry and other forms of energy are a tremendous catalyst for economic growth. At a time when millions of Americans are unemployed and underemployed, today the oil and natural gas industry supports 9.2 million American jobs. These are jobs in exploration and production, jobs in the service supply industry, which also create multipliers and create many other jobs in other sectors of our economy. And accessing more of our domestic oil and natural gas, which is currently placed off limits by government decision, could create a new 1.4 million American jobs. 1 million of those would be created in the next 7 years. That's good news, not just for American workers, but also for government treasuries. Pro-development energy policies could return over $800 billion, that's a B, additional dollars to the federal treasury by 2030. Accessing more of our country's own resources, using our country's own workers, would mean more money to federal treasury in the form of leases, bonus bids, and corporate taxes. Many of you might be surprised to note that today the oil and natural gas industry contributes $86 million a day to the federal treasury. But given the right opportunities tomorrow, we could fund and create even more revenue at a much needed and indeed desperate time in our nation's history. The third key fact, the opportunity for more access doesn't mean just more jobs, more revenue, and more economic growth. It means what I believe every presidential candidate will be talking about in this election cycle. It means greater national security. As the New York Times recently reported, energy geopolitics are currently rebalancing and being reshaped here on the Western Hemisphere. That is being led by the United States, Canada, and Brazil, who are at the forefront of literally changing the Middle East dynamic. This is not a vision of an America at the mercy of other oil-producing regions, but of an America that holds the reins to her own energy security. And this vision is indeed, once again, supported by the facts. There are trillions of dollars worth of still to be developed oil and natural gas here in the United States. And improving technology, whether the latest in horizontal directional drilling or hydraulic fracturing, advances in deep water exploration are making every discovery potentially more productive than before, while also improving our ability to produce energy in a safe and responsible way. Many of you here may not be aware, but last year the deepest deep water well in the world was drilled in the Gulf of Mexico. Our industry is also a world leader in the shale energy revolution, many of you have heard much about. And our refineries and pipelines produce and distribute some of the cleanest fuels in the world. The ability of our energy companies to develop our own resources is good news, because we will need more, even with our dramatic gains in energy efficiency. The Energy Information Administration predicts that the world will demand 45% more energy by 2030. Indeed, the United States will demand an additional 16% more energy in that same time frame. To get there, we're going to need a lot more of our renewable energy forms, but we're also going to need much more of oil and natural gas. And despite rapidly expanding renewable energy sources like solar and wind power, we'll still need oil and natural gas, which is projected to provide over 55% of all the energy consumed in the United States in 2035. Already, some of the shale energy revolution we've talked about has taken off in various parts of the United States. You've all read about it. It's transforming local economies. In North Dakota alone, much that you've read, has energy development has made the state the fourth largest oil producer in the United States today. It has driven the unemployment rate to the lowest in the nation at 3%. 1 in 7 of today's college graduates live at home because they can't find jobs. In North Dakota, young people working in the oil and gas industry hold jobs that pay more than their parents earn. The average oil and gas salary in North Dakota today is $90,000 an employee. That's more than double the state average. In Pennsylvania, to add another state, Governor Corbett's staff recently told me in the past year and a half to 2 years, we have created over 90,000 new jobs in the state of Pennsylvania alone. This development has also generated millions of dollars in revenue to their state treasury. We're also seeing these success stories across the country: Colorado, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, West Virginia, just to name a few. And we'll soon see that expanded activity in Ohio and hopefully in New York. The shale gas revolution has also driven down consumer natural gas prices. On a panel with Governor Corbett in Pennsylvania just a few months ago, he indicated their reduction or price savings in the state of Pennsylvania have saved their consumers over $245 million in energy costs as a result of the shale revolution. The availability of clean, efficient, reliable natural gas through shale development is keeping American businesses here at home, keeping them competitive, and keeping the jobs here on our own soil. The Wall Street Journal reported that West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania are currently competing for a new chemical plant, one of those that Cal would love to see built right here in the United States, to produce the critical building blocks for most of the products that we consume every day and serves as the foundation for our manufacturing sector. The shale energy resurgence is indeed creating a manufacturing resurgence here in the United States, in those cities and towns that have been hardest hit by unemployment. Now, that's one energy vision that we all aspire to. I believe many in this room share. Abundant resources, developed and refined here in the U.S. to the highest standards, creating domestic energy by Americans and for Americans. Unfortunately, Not everyone shares that vision of the energy future of the United States. Some seem to be opposed to all oil and natural gas development. There's a vision of restrained oil and natural gas development that keeps American resources beyond reach, that puts them on the shelf, missing from the energy equation, while encouraging greater production from the Mideast and Latin America. There's a vision that welcomes only certain energy investments, that favors particular sectors and resources and applauds only part of our abundant energy supplies. And they have backed this vision with opposition to domestic oil and natural gas production. We've seen it in limited planning for developing our resources, like the recent 5-year plan for the Outer Continental Shelf and onshore drilling restrictions. We've seen it in the continued delay of the Keystone XL pipeline from Canada, the largest shovel-ready project in the United States today that would create 20,000 new American jobs that would facilitate the creation of 500,000 U.S. jobs by 2035 by developing the oil sands of Canada and transporting them to the United States for refining. The pipeline and further development of Canada's oil sands could mean that our largest supplier of imported oil could supply even more. 1 in every 4 barrels of oil that the United States would need by 2030, making us by and large self-sufficient on the North American continent for liquid fuels. We see this other vision I've mentioned in an incoherent approach to natural gas development, lauding its obvious benefits while ratcheting up pressure for new layers of duplicative regulations that could cost and stop this energy development dead in its tracks. We see it in the onslaught of regulations from a host of federal agencies that threaten to impose unnecessary costs on businesses that are struggling to survive. Frankly, this vision and its policies are disconnected from current economic and energy reality. The vision ignores the jobs that energy could be and produce right here in the United States. It sets us on a course for less energy, not more. These policies and this vision are failing us. They prevent us from adequately preparing for the longer term when we know our nation will still be demanding substantial quantities of oil and natural gas to fuel our economy, combined with further development and progress in the form of alternative energies. We need focus. We need a clear path. That is why we are here today to engage in a conversation surrounding the future of energy policy here in the United States. To lay out a vision that acknowledges America has the resources to achieve 3 of our greatest priorities. First, to create American jobs. Second, to generate revenue by spurring investment in our nation to help turn around our economy, to support our government during times of record deficit and debt. And third, and equally important, to strengthen our national security. This is a vision of an energy future that keeps millions of Americans at work and generates millions of jobs in the near term. It's an energy future that will generate billions of dollars to federal, state, and local government, directly and indirectly as a result of the stimulus from the economic activity. It's a future that is available through our own domestic energy resources, strengthening America's energy security. So how do we get there? Well, it's going to take more than just tweaking the current policies that are currently in place. In fact, in our view, it's going to take a course correction. We need to acknowledge that the current path of shrinking energy options will not support the energy needs and economic growth to ensure a better future for all Americans. We cannot stay trapped by policies that are driven by a zero-sum philosophy for energy. That we must have less oil and natural gas so we can have more of something else. We must abandon the energy rhetoric that pits one resource against another. We need all of our resources: oil and gas, coal, nuclear, wind, solar, biofuels, and those that the great minds in this country have not yet thought of. Only through smart, realistic deployment of all America's energy assets can we realize our goal of keeping this country energy secure. Today, we are indeed on the wrong track. Even the status quo will not be enough to fuel our future. So let's change course. Let's take advantage of the many opportunities that we have to develop our own energy future. It's a future based on increased self-sufficiency, enhanced energy and national security through greater access to domestic resources. We can safely and responsibly produce more of the energy Americans want and need through our own significant supplies of oil and natural gas. The right track means more domestic energy of all types, including renewable energy, increased efficiency, and promoting environmentally friendly options, including those next generation technologies to reduce our carbon footprint. Getting on the right track means that we must engage the American people, those voices that we need to pay more attention to, on these issues and make energy an important part of our national debate during this, a key election year. Last night in Iowa, the first votes were cast, the starting gun was sounded of the election for the next president of the United States. API has worked hard over the past few months to engage the energy discussion, not only here in Washington, but in various states, particularly the primary states, where these candidates are now being winnowed out to decide who will compete for the office of president. This year, an election year, presents a perfect opportunity to encourage that discussion. So today we're announcing and launching a new national initiative, Vote for Energy, which will help Americans understand what's at stake and why energy issues should figure prominently in their voting decisions. Vote for Energy is not about a political party. It's not about candidates. We want to encourage all voters to make energy a voting issue. You can see some of the ads that have been placed around the room and some that are on the screen as you came in today. For those who travel in the metro system, you'll see the Capital South Metro stop. Dominated, Vote for Energy, our new campaign that's being launched today. This is not an advertising campaign. Our expectation is that it will be a conversation with the American people. We'll uphold our end of that conversation through information distributed through our state partners, through the millions of Americans we currently communicate with on social media platforms, and through conversations like the one we're having here today. We'll be encouraging the current president and the Republican presidential candidate to participate as well. We need our president, our leaders in Congress, and state and local officials to talk about the energy choices that we face, the challenges and the opportunities ahead for us, and a vision for our country's energy future. We are doing this because an electorate that is educated on energy issues will demand of all candidates, of all offices, a commitment to honest, common sense discussions on how we can achieve energy security. In making those demands, voters will be, in effect, voting for energy future and a better future for our nation. A vote for energy is not a vote for a person or a party or even a philosophy. We won't be picking sides or choosing candidates. Energy is not, nor should it be, a partisan matter. But we will help promote the understanding that a vote for energy is a vote for America and for its future. We believe that the state of American energy today is strong, but it holds even greater promise. Over the course of our history, Americans have refused to settle for less, and we don't have to settle for less now. We have the resources to meet our energy challenges. With the right leadership and vision, we can turn our challenges into opportunities that will make our country even stronger. That's our goal. It's the object of our campaign that we're launching today, and we hope that each one of you will join us in the new energy debate in voting for energy. Thank you very much for your attention, and Shelby, I'll turn the time back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jack. First question, with these elections looming in front of us, what energy decisions do you see being made or even strongly debated over the next 10 months?
Well, we hope in the next 60 days the big one's going to be the Keystone XL pipeline. And we hope there's going to be an affirmative decision coming out of the White House. The one decision before the president is this in the national interest? That's the only decision the president has to make. So contrary to some of the confusion some may have heard about we don't have time to make this decision, the Congress has already made the decision and given the president the opportunity to declare it in the national interest. He has 60 days to do that. We are hopeful and encouraged that he will make that affirmative decision, thus creating 20,000 new American jobs immediately and facilitate the creation of another 500,000 U.S. jobs by 2030. So that's the first key decision, Shelby, one that's on the top of our mind, as you can appreciate. From there, we believe we need to have an ongoing discussion and dialogue, understanding the energy realities. Energy, unfortunately, for many years has slipped into more of a partisan mode. It shouldn't be. It's not a partisan issue, and it impacts all Americans. So we hope the strong support given by Democrats, Republicans, or whatever political philosophy one might have engages in this conversation about energy reality. How can we produce more energy here, generate American jobs, create revenue, and make us more nationally secure?
You, as always, were one step ahead. I had a question which we went to from a distinguished guest here, Dan Jurgen, who, if you don't know, he is the Homer and Herodotus of the energy industry. He wrote the prize.
We're honored Dan would be here today, Amen. Shelby. So.
Amen. And but it has revealed, as always with our heroes, a slight touch of a clay foot. Dan wrote The Prize and The Quest, which is his most recent book, a terrific book, wonderfully reviewed. And I asked him to write a question we could use. Dan is a great writer, but I defy any one of you looking at this to say that he is a great handwriter. Nevertheless, he asks also about the Keystone debate and nudges you a little bit to say, how do you see it playing out? And we have a follow-up question saying, do you plan to make the Keystone pipeline decision an election issue? So how do those work?
Well, I think the Keystone XL pipeline decision is already an election issue. You heard it even last night with the candidate who I understand today announced he was going to step down, indicate that was one of the big mistakes on the part of the current President of the United States. So whether we try to or not, the Keystone XL pipeline will be a presidential election issue and will likely play out much broader in state races, state Senate, U.S. Senate, and the list goes on. So I think regardless of what we do, even though we're big proponents of it for a number of reasons, it will indeed be an election issue. I think it would be a huge mistake on the part of the President of the United States to deny the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. The pipeline has had 2 comprehensive environmental reviews over the past 2 years. The determination that it has no significant environmental impact was made last August. The decision before the President today to approve the pipeline permit, is it in the national interest? That's really the only decision left to make. Of the 90-day window to make that decision, we were already through day 75 when the arbitrary political decision was made to remove that from the process and to punt the question until after the election cycle. Clearly, the Keystone XL pipeline is in the national interest. A determination to decide anything less than that, I believe, will have huge political consequences to it.
Okay. So another question on a different but related topic. Why do you oppose regulations of hydraulic fracturing? Says the questioner.
Clearly somebody's not in the industry, right, Shelby? Is that it? The industry strongly supports appropriate regulation of hydraulic fracturing. In fact, we are actively working almost on a daily basis, working with states and localities where it's appropriate to regulate hydraulic fracturing, in addition to the various federal statutes that apply. Hydraulic fracturing, the development of oil and natural gas resources in the United States, is a highly regulated industry. Secretary Salazar has repeated that often in his testimony on Capitol Hill. Hydraulic fracturing today is regulated where it should be, at the local state level, so they can deal with the local conditions, the topography, the geologies that are unique to those areas. If you talk to governors and you talk to state regulators, they will tell you that they are very aggressively and actively regulating hydraulic fracturing activities. There is no need to create duplication and inconsistent regulation which only slows energy development. In fact, in some cases, makes it beyond our reach. Hydraulic fracturing should continue to be regulated at the state level, and we strongly support that as an industry.
Okay. So, could America's energy independence be affected by joint ventures with energy companies?
Joint ventures between companies or with the United States government?
With sovereign energy companies, it says. I'm just repeating the question.
Well, let me go to the question. Let me first dispel a bit of a myth, and that's around energy independence. We operate in a global economy. The likelihood that the United States will become energy independent from all forms of all types of energies is not realistic in the short term. Now, having said that, as I talked about today, we have vast resources, and due to modern technology advances, resources that can be developed right here in the United States. Of those resources, oil and natural gas, which by and large provides the liquid fuels that we consume in the country, if we were allowed to develop our resources in the United States that are currently off limits, coupled with the imports from Canada, our largest energy trading partner, coupled with the expanded development of realistically renewable forms of energy, we could become energy self-sufficient for liquid fuels in 15 years. By 2026, the liquid fuels we demand in this country would be produced here or come from Canada, coupled with renewable forms of energy. So that's a reasonable expectation with right governmental policies that we could achieve and become far less reliant on forms of energy that are in unstable parts of the world. You only have to look at the front page of newspapers today and see what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz and elsewhere. In light of that conversation, it would be a huge political mistake for the president to deny the Keystone XL pipeline.
Here's a question that begins with a plea. Please mention, quote, good regulations, unquote. For example, it's an election year. For example, how did the U.S. become the net exporter of oil and gas in the overly regulated environment, quote unquote? Two, what role did regulation play in the U.S. being able to produce the cleanest products in the world? Temple of free speech here.
That's right. Appropriate regulation is welcomed, and the industry strongly supports it. Let me make clear, we're not asking for no regulation. We're asking for thoughtful, efficient, timely regulation. We need to sort through the duplicative levels of activity that occur between state, federal, local levels. We need to sort through long permitting processes that take far too long to put us back to work in places like the Gulf of Mexico. If you look at your handout today, a recent Quest study that just came out last month analyzing what occurred in the Gulf of Mexico as a result of the unfortunate moratorium, the United States was projected to receive 12% of the global development dollars, investment dollars in the Gulf of Mexico this year to produce oil and natural gas. As a result of the Gulf of Mexico moratorium, we got half of that. 11 rigs left. We lost 90,000 jobs. That's the sort of unnecessary policy decision and regulation that we can't afford. We welcome constructive, appropriate regulation and work closely with regulators to achieve that. Some may be surprised the American Petroleum Institute, API, was originally established as a standard-setting organization. We were created in 1924 to develop best practices that we would drive industry performance even higher. We do that today with over 500 standards in a transparent process that's certified by the American National Standards Institute. In developing those best practices, we raise the bar on our industry even higher than what regulation requires. In fact, many regulatory and legislative bodies adopt our standards as the best practice, not only domestically, but on a global basis. So we take regulation very seriously. We just believe it should be done in a thoughtful, efficient way.
Leads directly to the last question. Are you more satisfied now with where the administration is headed in developing the nation's offshore oil and gas resources?
Well, we were pleased with the first lease sale that occurred in the Gulf last month. I will say, though, to put that into context, it's the first lease sale that occurred in 18 months. It would have been the first time since the 1957, I believe, that we had missed a lease sale in the United States if we had taken it 1 month further. So we welcome that first lease sale following the unfortunate spill in the Gulf. However, the lease sales as part of the current 5-year plan put forward by the administration limits the activity to the western and central Gulf of Mexico, the areas where we have been producing for 65 years and produced over 40,000 wells. We pretty well understand the resource in that area. The places we need to look are places where we haven't been in the past, where we need to do new seismic studies. With modern technology today, we can much better define where those resources are. We have vast resources in the United States, not only offshore, but onshore. Through recent technological advances that we've spoken of earlier, there is much greater opportunity. And today, since we import around 50% of what we consume, wouldn't it be much better to produce it here, to employ Americans, to reduce our balance of payment deficit that is going outside our shores to buy energy? Let's produce it here, create millions of new jobs, generate revenue for the federal, state governments, and make us nationally secure because we know where our energy sources are, and we can do it right here at home by Americans for Americans.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you. As I said, the Newseum is honored to host this kind of dialogue, and no matter how you look at it, from which framework or viewpoint, energy will continue to be a top priority for our country. All of the materials referenced here can be found on www.energytomorrow.org. And I thank API and Jack Gerard for hosting this informative and timely event. Thank you all for joining us. You're welcome to come back for tours anytime. I've offered Jack our top-of-the-line red carpet Warren Buffett tour of the Newseum, of the galleries. And some of you may be able to tag along with him, especially Dan Yergin, if we can get him some penmanship lessons for his next bestseller. But I do get the quest. Please remain seated until the cameras move to the media room. The media briefing will begin shortly in that next room, and media people, reporters and bloggers, are free to question at will. Thank you very much for coming. Good afternoon.